There is an account on Twitter that I know some people look to for reliable news. I'm not really sure how reliable it is, but Boozer Wrestling on Twitter posted something that got people talking this week and said Bray Wyatt has been around a few times, meaning that Bray, I guess, has been backstage recently a few times. His plans are there for his return, a feud suggested and approved by everyone. It's only a call of when. The discussion is for Summerslam, so I would keep an eye on one of the main events that night. Now, as always with these Twitter accounts, you take what they report with a healthy dose of skepticism, but Roman Reigns against Jey Uso, that is the main event of SummerSlam this year. The other match that they are referring to, and Michael Cole called it a main event on Friday, the other so-called main event of SummerSlam this year is Cody Rhodes against Brock Lesnar. If Cody Rhodes goes from feuding with Brock Lesnar to feuding for months on end with Bray Wyatt, may the gods be with him. Fightful also reported this week on creative plans that WWE had for Bray as far back as 2019, when he first started doing the Fiend character. That would have included turning the Firefly Funhouse puppets into real-life people. The report states there was recently a story that indicated there were plans in 2019 for Eric Young and Mike Bennett to serve in a Bray Wyatt stable that would see his puppets come to life. As it turns out, there is actually some truth to that. We've learned that prior to their WWE releases in 2020, there were pitches from Paul Heyman to have Mike Bennett and Eric Young involved with Bray Wyatt. However, the pitch made it to Bennett, but not Young. It ended up getting pitched more than once, including an idea for Mike Bennett to perform as Sister Abigail. That sounds positively terrible. Fightful reported that Eric Young requested and was granted his WWE release this spring before serving out his non-compete clause and returning to Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary last weekend. Despite never appearing for WWE after signing in November, there were creative plans in order for him. Young was to be involved in a new style version of the Wyatt family with both Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, who had been portraying Uncle Howdy on TV. We are told the creative plans were set in January and would have kicked off after WrestleMania. However, Bray Wyatt was sidelined with an undisclosed illness, and neither he nor Bo Dallas have appeared on TV since. By the time the angle would have started, Young had asked for his release, citing moral and creative reasons tied to working with Vince McMahon as the reason that he did not want to be there. It was also noted that there were pitches for Alexa Bliss to join before her maternity leave, which were nixed when it was obvious that she wouldn't be around for all of 2023. There was talk about a Wyatt 6 faction early on. People were going nuts about the Wyatt 6, trying to decode some of the tweets he would post online and the red circle emojis, and it was a whole thing. So there was talk about that early on. I don't know who the other two people would have been. You would have had Bray. You would have had Eric Young. You would have had Alexa. You would have had Bo. I don't know who the other two would have been in the so-called Wyatt 6. Eric Young gave an interview, although before I get to that, there was talk about Vincent and Dutch. So there may have been something to that. Vincent and Dutch, who ended up signing with AEW, now they're working for the Ring of Honor brand. That could have been it. Maybe there was some truth to the Vincent and Dutch stuff, and when Bray went away, maybe the whole thing fell apart. I don't remember the timeline of when Vincent and Dutch signed with Tony Khan, but it might line up. But Eric Young gave an interview, being that Eric Young was mentioned here. Eric Young gave an interview to Mike Johnson of PWInsider.com. For those still unconvinced by these recent reports of him quitting because he didn't want to work with Vince McMahon or he didn't want to work for Vince McMahon, well, now you have it from the horse's mouth. On his decision to leave WWE and return to Impact, this is what Eric Young said. The thing with Anthem is, truth be told, I've never not worked for Anthem since leaving Impact. I've been appearing multiple times a week on Game Plus Network for the last 3 years, so I was still linked to them when I was under contract at the other place. I signed up for one thing, and it turned into something completely different, and personally, professionally, and more importantly for me morally, I just could not work there anymore. If you're a wrestling fan, you know what's going on, and I know that you're a smart guy, Mike, and you're well aware of what I'm saying and what's going on. It was not a super difficult choice for me, to be honest. I know it was a dream come true going back for sure, The contract was fantastic and all this other stuff, and I was poised to do or the stuff that I was poised to do on the TV show was excellent. But in the end, I would have had to answer to somebody that I am just not willing to do. Like I said earlier, I'm a believer in fate and everything happens for a reason, and I'm not mad about it. I'm not bitter about it, just like I wasn't last time. Obviously, it was a massive mistake on one person's part, but a huge gain for wrestling. Eric Young leaving WWE will have no impact, no pun intended, on their business at the end of the day. But good for him. Good for Eric Young for standing his ground and leaving behind a great contract to stay true to his convictions. If he felt that morally he could not work for the sex pest, then that's good for him. I have a lot of respect for him making that decision. Someone who may be going the opposite way, this time from Impact to WWE, is former NWA champion Nick Aldis, who wrapped up his very brief run with Impact last weekend in a losing effort to Alex Shelley. That was for the Impact World title at Slammiversary. And then in a match with Eric Young at their tapings the next night. So, he did business on the way out, and his run is over. Now, he only returned to the promotion in April, so this wasn't even a full 6-month run. If you talk about short-term runs, this was a short-term run. There was said to be interest in him from WWE at the beginning of the year, going back before the Royal Rumble, and he did have conversations with them. All he would say about it is that timing was a big factor in why things didn't work out. Now, that was during a period of time where there was supposedly a hiring freeze. Or if there wasn't an official hiring freeze, then they certainly weren't signing very many names at the time. And the pending deal with Endeavor probably has a lot to do with that because business is booming right now. So, it can't be a financial thing. They could sign anybody they want. My guess is they told him, hey, wait it out. He went and signed a very short-term deal with Impact because, the man's got to work. Now that deal is over, and WWE may be an option, but not as a wrestler. Per PW Insider, it would be for a role as a producer/agent behind the scenes. So who even knows if he would be interested in that role? That's like WWE offering Thunder Rosa a job as a referee. Aldis is only 36 years old. It's not like he's aged out in the ring. I don't see them making him a world heavyweight champion or anything, but he could certainly get a main roster spot on either show, and I think he's a good promo. But it could be a case where it's, backstage or nothing. Maybe they don't want him as a wrestler. This notion that they're still not willing to sign people to wrestle until the Endeavor deal goes through, really, it's nonsense. They signed Carlito. He just hasn't debuted yet. But they signed Carlito. So if they want somebody bad enough, they will sign them. Brian Pillman Jr. was spotted at the WWE Performance Center last week. His AEW contract expired. So he's a free agent. He supposedly got a tryout. Now this week we hear that they have no plans to sign him anytime soon. Again, I hear the Endeavor stuff mentioned. If they wanted Brian Pillman Jr. bad enough, they would sign Brian Pillman Jr. and send him to developmental. If they want Nick Aldis bad enough, they will sign Nick Aldis. And if he wants to wrestle and they don't want him to, then he's going to have a decision to make. Someone like Abyss leaving Impact after all those years and signing with WWE as a producer made sense because he was 45 years old and his body was beaten to shit. Outside of that brief time he was on screen with AJ Styles, remember he was his stat guy? He's been exclusively behind the scenes. And apparently very well liked behind the scenes. Aldis doesn't have the miles on his body that Abyss does, and he's not 45 years old. But if this is true, and he wants to wrestle, he may have to accept the reality that WWE is not going to be the destination for him.